Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous. I'm Stephanie Soebbing. Today we're going to talk about what you're going to do if you're going to use the long arm for our free motion quilting series. First of all, you are going to use the long arm quilting directions. There's two. There's one for quilts as you go, and then there is one for if you're just piecing it to go on the long arm. Your sashing is going to be a little bit wider. The way you assemble the blocks is different, and it just is to make life a little easier for you when you're putting it on there. Second, there's a couple things you want to do for setup to make life easier on yourself. First of all, you're going to want to have things work a little bit differently when you are putting the chalk powder and using the stencils. So what you want first is you need something hard underneath the quilt in order to transfer the chalk powder to that. You can't put it on before you roll the quilt because it will just come off in the process of putting it on the long arm. So what you're going to do instead is grab like an underbed storage container from Target. We have this one here that we use to store all of our books in that I've written before they're sold to go out to you guys. If you just put that on the bed of your long arm with the lid on, and then you loosen up the quilt on the rollers, you're going to be able to lay it flat on the top of the lid, and that gives you enough surface to work with. Then you can mark it just as we've shown you on the other blocks. I will say that not so much for this quilt because I was just doing one block at a time when I was marking. But when you're marking a big pass for like an all over, I often will see like double vision lines, and in that case you just kind of pick the line you want to follow. Also, make sure you're not going super fast when you're going, because a lot of times the chalk powder tends to kind of bounce off with the vibrations of the long arm faster than it does on the domestic sewing machine. So just take your time as you're following the lines and getting everything just right. But as far as marking, it's totally the same once you have that storage container underneath. Then when you're done marking, just remove it and you're good to go. You're also going to see me outline every single block before I start to quilt. In order to do that, I use Rulerwork tools. Now, this is not a deal breaker. You can totally do this series if you don't have this. You just eyeball it. But know that these tools exist, and if you really want to make your quilting like really get to the next level, this is a good thing to invest in. So the first thing you're going to need if you want to use Rulerwork to outline is a ruler base. Now these are this is from Hartley. They make a bunch to go with any machine model that's out there, but contact your dealer to figure out what one you need for your specific model, because this one, I use an APQS Lenny. This would be way too small to go on an APQS Millie, which is their big daddy machine. So make sure you have the right one for your model. What it does is the machine itself just fits right over here. So if I were taking a ruler and I were putting it over here, it would be flopping big time. But what it does is it gives it this nice big space to have my ruler on, and then I can slide over top and I can do all of these outlines without having any issues. You want to also make sure that you have a ruler foot on your long arm. Mine came with one already attached, and I think that's the only one I got when I purchased it. What it is it's going to be a metal circle that goes all the way around the edge of your needle, and when you have any ruler pressed up against the side of that circle, it's going to be exactly a 1/4 inch away. Your needle will be exactly a 1/4 inch away from the edge of your ruler. So that will allow you to do all kinds of really cool things. In this class, you're going to see me outline every single block before I get started. For the top and bottom rows, I actually was able to just kind of travel in the batting and do all of that in one go. But for the center 2 rows, the second and third row, I did outline every single one individually. The reason why I like to do that is it kind of keeps everything nice and square, keeps your quilt from getting all wobbly and wavy on you. And aesthetically, I just like the way it looks because it also gives me places to travel, which becomes important when you're doing designs like this one, where like I'm going to come down here and then I need to travel over to get to the next line. And it just looks a lot more cohesive when there's a line going all the way across as opposed to on the bottom of every other one. So I just like the way that looks personally for me. Also, I use the Rulerwork whenever I was outlining blocks that we created with lines. So for all of the changing scales, we had these triangles that for the Quilt As You Go version, I just do with the walking foot. That's not an option for you if you're doing it on the long arm. So what I did was I just drew it out with my friction gel pen, and then I just used Rulerwork to go over the top. Same thing when I was working on the skinny borders or when we quilted out the actual star block as well, and was outlining that. So again, if you've never done Rulerwork before, or if you don't have the tools to do Rulerwork, do not let that stop you from doing this. Just make the marks and eyeball it. That's fine. That's totally fine. I have done eyeballing, outlining at the very beginning of my quilting career on the long arm when I did not have the proper tools. It does not look as good as when you have them, but it is possible. It still looks okay. You don't need to panic if you don't have those things, and don't let it stop you from getting on this journey. Couple other things. I stop and start a lot with inside the blocks. So what I do is I put my needle down and pull my bobbin thread up to the top, and then I will stitch, back and forth a little bit to secure those threads so that they won't come out. And then when I am done stitching, I do the same thing. I will stitch back and forth, and then I'll pull my bobbin thread back up to the top and then snip that, and I cut it right down. I do not bury those threads. I have never had a problem with it becoming unraveled because I secure them with that back stitch before I do that. But if you want to, you certainly can take the time to bury those threads. I do believe we have a video, very old, about how to do that, but with a self-threading needle. But know that you don't have to do it as long as you secure your threads properly. So those are the biggies that you need to know in order to do this on the long arm versus the Quilt As You Go. It's not hard. If you have had a long arm for a long time, you may have already done some of these things. If you've had a long arm, maybe it's been computerized, maybe you haven't had to do any of this stuff before. But maybe if it's computerized, you can just program it to do your outlining for you, and then you can skip that step too, and you don't need to get the fancy stuff. But know that if you don't have the fancy stuff, don't let it stop you. Just do it, just eyeball it, it'll be fine. And then, but know that if that's challenging for you, but you like the look of it, there are tools available to make it easier and turn out better if you want to continue down that path in your quilting journey. All right, so if you haven't already, grab a kit for this. Make sure you've got the pattern downloaded and that you're paying attention to the instructions for the long arm version of this course. And also make sure you have your stencil packs because we will need those to quilt with as well. All right, and until the next video, happy quilting.